All right, well, we are intending to continue with this conversation, these accusations by the United States ambassador that South Africa armed Russia. And this was in December. Remember, the war began in February of last year already. So by December, the world knew exactly what was going on. Let's speak now to the minister in the presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, who has just joined us. Minister, thank you very much for your time. I want to kick off the conversation with the Arms Control Committee that we understand is headed by the minister who sits in the presidency. Is that you? And tell us what the work of this committee does exactly before we get into details.
Thank you. I will not want to talk about who heads the Arms Controls Committee, but it's a committee that is responsible for approving or authorizing sale of conventional arms that are manufactured or produced in South Africa to any jurisdiction in the world. And they consider compliance to international conventions against arms produced in South Africa being used to kill women and children and innocent people.
Why is it a secret that we don't, or we ought not to know who heads up this committee?
Because I'm not the chairperson of the Arms Convention Committee. It's a named committee, but given the reconfiguration, the president will have to then appoint a new chairperson of the committee. The reconfiguration of cabinet impacts on the membership and the chairing.
Yes.
I can confirm that by default that I sit there because I'm also minister responsible for state security.
All right. Let's talk about this ship, Lady R, in December of last year. We've just had a conversation with a senior journalist at City Press, and she says that there was certainly a delivery of arms, and she even quotes the Minister of Defense as confirming this. Did South Africa have some kind of exchange, armament exchange, with Russia in Simonstown in December?
What I'm going to respond to is the statement that was issued by the presidency that confirms that we're going to set up a commission of inquiry. The Minister of Defense came out and explained that they had a consignment that they received from Russia, but I will not want to go into detail of saying what are the consignments, because then you make me party to that inquiry. But what I can inform you is that in terms of the National Conventional Arms Control Committee, there was no authorization of sale of armaments to either Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. And I'm raising the Belarus issue because last year there was a parliamentary question to the Minister of Defense and also to the chairpersons of the National Conventional Arms Control Committee to say, did you sell armaments to Belarus? The committee never considered any applications, or there was no application brought in front of the committee to consider a sale of armaments into those three countries. So where we are, I will not want to then go back and deal with what the Minister of Defense has already dealt with. Whether she was misled by the officials is going to be part of that inquiry, and the inquiry will then detail the information. What I can then clearly clarify is that there was no, officially, there was no request to sell armaments to Russia, Ukraine, or Belarus. And that's the position that we are. Whether in terms of the armaments that were made in South Africa were then loaded into one ship or into another aircraft or whatever, for us it's a matter that the inquiry will then determine, and they'll come through. And I will not want to be part of those who testify in front of the inquiry, because I told Xoli Mngambi that we received this consignment, and this was what's in the consignment. I want to remain on the statement that was issued by the Minister of Defense, that they've, in terms of where they are, she was informed that they've received their long outstanding order.
All right. Well, at least we are thankful for the confirmation from the Defense Minister, as you put it, that she has confirmed that South Africa received a consignment from Russia, and this was in December. Let's talk about a Russian plane that is reported to have landed at our military base in Pretoria. Why did that plane land here, and was it indeed from Russia?
But Claudia, I think South Africa, we need to be cognizant that there are no sanctions against Russia from South Africa or from the United Nations. Russia can then come to South Africa at any given time. They can bring their airplanes, they can bring their cargoes, they can bring whatever that is to be brought, but they must comply with the rules of this country when they do so. And landing of a Russian plane in the military airport is not anything out of the anomaly. It has to be authorized. They would have applied and they would have received the necessary authorization, because it is the type, the category of plane that is entitled to land at the military airport. Is nothing untoward. So we don't have sanctions against Russia as South Africa. The United Nations, which is the only body that can take a decision to sanction, and then all of us must comply, have not taken sanctions against Russia, and therefore Russia is free to move in and out of South Africa as and when they want to.
All right. So explain then, Minister Ntshavheni, the diplomatic fallout between South Africa and the United States. That is now out in the open. I don't think there can be any denial of that. How should South Africans understand this?
I don't think there's a diplomatic fallout between South Africa and the U.S. The diplomatic conduct of the U.S. ambassador in South Africa should not create an impression that there is a fallout. He chooses to play in a different manner and not follow the right protocols, and he has done that to the detriment of the U.S. If you recall, when the embassy issued a terror alert, they issued a false terror alert, and that terror alert was threatening not only the richest square mile in Africa, but it was at the time where in that square mile there was going to be the largest gay pride march in the country, and they did that not considering that in the continent of Africa we still have challenges of homophobia, and therefore when you threaten or intimidate a gay pride march, you are not only trying to undermine the sovereignty of the South African government, but you are threatening the protection of people, the LGBTQIT community, because you are saying there are people who are open to attack them in this country, and that was unsavory. Even again, this shouting that he did yesterday and say, "Hey, we sold armaments." In terms of protocol, he must communicate with his government through the DECO, the Department of International Relations, and raise his concerns. And we have different liaisons. If there are any concerns, he could have raised the concerns with the liaisons in defense, liaison in intelligence, the liaison in police, and say these are the issues, or the DECO itself, so these are the issues that we are picking up. What are you doing to address it?
Minister
the fact that he doesn't want to follow proper protocols, it doesn't make that there is a fallout. If I can just give you another indication that there's no fallout. The U.S. requested us to say, can you try to mediate the war between Russia and Ukraine? And we said, yes, we'll do that. And we're engaging in that process, and we'll outline what are the efforts that we are making at the appropriate time, and then to make sure that there is a peaceful resolution to the war in Ukraine.
So, Minister, if South Africa is confident, as you put it, if the South African government is absolutely certain that we have done nothing that the U.S. accuses us of today, why is there a need for a judicial inquiry? Because a retired judge to investigate this, that's a judicial inquiry. Why would there be a need for such?
No, I think we should not conflate the issues. The issue is that there was a vessel that docked in Simonstown, and there were allegations that were made, not by the U.S. only. There was the compliance issues that were made to say, was it supposed to dock there and whatever. So we need to then investigate. And I'm not going to say the U.S. did not raise concerns about Lady R. They did, but there is a process that we said will undertake to address those concerns. And it's not in response to the megaphone diplomacy of the ambassador, it's because of the engagements we've always had with the U.S. Government at proper levels.
Correct.
To say, look, we have this concerns, and we say we'll investigate those in case you are correct, because we cannot shy away to say there are people who may do things illegally and not follow the laws, and we need to satisfy all our partners that we have complied and there was no bending of the rules or there was no violation of the Act of Parliament in performing of this duty.
If you
that's the purpose of that judicial inquiry.
What you've just done now, Minister, is raise more questions in my mind, because you're saying that this is necessary in case you are right, which then talks to South Africa's law enforcement, South Africa's intelligence capabilities, because if something like this could happen, and it obviously was done underhandedly, it means that obviously it was not sanctioned from government, which means then it is illegal. Then we'd have to talk about that. Time is against me. So you're saying that there's no fallout between the U.S. and South Africa diplomatically. So in the diplomatic language... All right, let me conclude this. Let me just say this. If there is no fallout, there is what is called a démarche, and that's when you summon the ambassador to explain himself. Is that what is going to be done now, or are you actually going to report him to Washington?
Well, we'll follow the right diplomatic channels to deal with our issues with the U.S. When there's no fallout, it doesn't mean we agree with the U.S. It doesn't mean the U.S. is happy with us in all the things that we're doing. But it cannot be classified as a fallout. And it's in the nature of diplomatic relations. Sometimes we are happy with each other, sometimes we are not happy with each other, but it does not necessarily mean a fallout.
All right, Minister, I'm completely out of time, and I'm actually going to be the one that's sanctioned here. But I've got to ask you this question. This entire period, the war between Russia and Ukraine, our non-aligned stance, when all of this is written one day in history, how would you want South Africa to be remembered as having contributed towards the ending of that war? What is it that you think we would have done positively to end that war?
What I think South Africa will be remembered for when all these things are said and done is the one that would have facilitated peace between Russia and Ukraine.
Thank you very much for your time. Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, Minister in the Presidency, thanks indeed for your time.